Force delivering, you want me to start over? All right, it's okay. So I was talking to the Air Force delivering this analysis, and I slowly started just getting very absorbed in this slide that I had prepared, which was overfilled with text and equations. And the more I talked about the results, the more my body turned to the slide. And at one point, my back was to the Air Force. And I was completely absorbed in what I was talking about and completely oblivious to the audience that I should have been speaking to. Now, there was a vice president in the back of the room, and after this was over and the Air Force left and everything, she came up to me and said, "Let's have a meeting." And from that beginning of the conversation, which, by the way, her name was Elizabeth Taylor, not the actress, the VP, a technical woman, I became obsessed with learning how to communicate. She sparked my fire. And since then, I have gotten better and I've worked harder and I've been able to make a difference not only in my life, but also many that I've mentored and many customers I work with. And I'm happy to share this session with all of you in the whole art of communication and presentation as we work with students, especially. And to start us all off, I always know that in every single room where I speak, there's talent and there's knowledge. So we're going to be covering 3 topics, and I want to hear from you as well on what nuggets that you have that work well in your environment. Because let's face it, MESA is a phenomenal program, and we deserve to give our students the best. And I know that the best is in the room. So one of the first aspects when I'm working with anybody, and I hear a lot of people say, yeah, how do we give our youth confidence? So I'm going to go ahead and let you raise your hand. We're going to use the electronic hand function. If you have a little tip or a secret or something that you find is a way that you know really helps give the students confidence. So think about that. And if not, you can also go ahead and enter into the chat. And Kelly's going to help me quite a bit with all of this. So this is interactive. How do you help people with confidence? And Kelly, I do want to ask you, what do you think helped you develop confidence in speaking?
I would say repetition.
Okay.
Just always being in front. I think that's something you have to get over very quickly teaching. I also taught middle school. Middle schoolers are the meanest people on the planet when it comes to being a speaker in front of them. So I guess just trial by fire, just like constantly going up and speaking every day.
That's true. Repetition. You made a couple of key points there that I want to build off. Yeah, and in fact, I love this. I'm seeing some comments come through here. One of the best ways to develop confidence is to repeat, practice, stand in front of the mirror, stand in front of the dog, stand in front of your peers over and over and over again. The more we do it, as any age person, the more we become confident about our information. So go ahead, Kelly, tell me what's going on in the chat with this subject.
A lot of repetition, also being confident in knowing your stuff, really knowing your content, really knowing your subject.
Let's talk about that for just a moment. This is something that's really important. If you don't have depth of knowledge in what you're talking about and the information you're sharing, it is very hard, no matter how much confidence you're trying to muster, to go ahead and figure out how to share that information. So I know that our MESA advisors, many of the MESA advisors I've met, you work really hard on helping the student think through, understand. I mean, the whole concept of MESA is all about doing. It's not just learning, it's doing. It's working it out, kind of stumbling a little bit here and there, finding out what works, that discovery aspect of it. The whole MESA program is all about that. And the way you get that confidence is to really have that depth of knowledge. So I'm asking all of you, let me just know as a yes or a no, as you're working with MESA students in their projects, especially with the NECD, the Passion Project, how do you help the student develop that deep knowledge and skill? Is it repetition of asking questions? Do you do that? how, just you can just give me a yes or a no if you want to go ahead and pop that into the chat, which is now going to make it tough because Kelly, you're going to have to go backwards and tell me what else is going on in the chat. So what are people saying? Is there any other tips where it's just like asking the questions, tell me more, tell me more. What did you learn? What's going on? So we're getting yeses, nos?
We're getting yeses, but I'd like to see some
Excellent.
tips. Seriously, people, how do you get them to do this?
Excellent. All right. So tell me more about what some other people may be entering into the chat about developing confidence.
The importance of well-paced and strong pauses. I had a comment, confidence is a mental projection of the assurance of established knowledge. I love that.
Wow. Okay. That's a great quote. I'm going to make sure I capture this chat. Very articulate. I'm the mathematician in the group, so I look for articulation to come from my peers. My husband is actually beautiful at eloquence of language. Yeah, absolutely. It's that repetition and over and over and over again. I don't know if any of you use a topic, excuse me, a tip that I share with a lot of people, which is the first time I gave a talk. I joined Toastmasters years ago, very helpful. And the very first talk that you give is about yourself. And that's one of the tips that Elizabeth Taylor, the VP, shared with me is join this. There was a company club. I practiced at home over and over and over again. And, there's dog people and cat people. Dog people love you no matter what. You could just look at them. You could just start reading recipes, whatever it is. They love you, right? The cat people, I mean, the cats, they might just leave the room. I couldn't keep the dog in the room. It was just terrible. And I worked and I worked and worked. So I found a picture frame. Sometimes this can be helpful in helping your students is if they're uncomfortable with speaking, get a picture frame that has a picture of somebody in it. For me, I had a picture of my grandmother. My grandmother was so encouraging, so loving, and so much of a presence in helping me feel stronger about myself. So I got the picture frame and I talked to her. Because one of the aspects of repetition is a lot of us think, okay, I'll just practice it. So you might sit in bed or you might walk around with your notes, and you're just kind of just giving the talk over and over again. And having a picture frame of somebody, and maybe it is your cousin, it might be your teacher, it might be you, it may be somebody that really they want to talk to. So the grandmother for me was a good person to sit there and talk to. I've also heard that some people say, well, I have a young sister or a son, a young brother, and or a cousin that's young, and I want them to learn. So when you have that face in front of you, and then you practice the talk, then you practice the material, then you practice the presentation that you have to give, you're actually looking at a face instead of the notes. Because here's something else with confidence. When we are giving a presentation, sometimes you may have seen some of your students, they'll kind of look up here somewhere or over to the side. And what's going on typically, which you probably already know, is they're looking at the notes that they wrote. And they're seeing that piece of paper up there, and they're kind of just willing them to see what's on that page. And when you do the practice, instead of looking at your notes, you're actually looking at a face with eyes. It brings, especially as geeks, out of that world of in being in our head into being connected with others. So one of the big tips is have a photograph or a picture or some face of somebody you want to share the information with. It's very, very important. Something else to think about is suggest that your students practice, or maybe you could have them do this in a weird place. A lot of times we'll practice in our house or we'll practice in the classroom. Why not practice in the hall at school and have your students think about the focus on the audience, not anybody who may be walking down the hallway. Or maybe if it's a nice day, you go outside and don't focus on the cars coming to pick people up. Focus on the person that you're talking to. When we can break that in our head moment and we can actually focus intently and not focus on being distracted by any of these other distractions that are around us, we have the ability to be more confident when we do the presentation with one person. So in addition to that picture and that face, think about going into a weird space that's non-traditional, where there might be some people walking around or driving around, or maybe in the park and you've got dogs wandering around, and you say, okay, I want you to ignore everything except for me. And if you do this outside and you're the audience, go ahead and walk around a little bit, not just stand in one place. Go ahead and move around, maybe look down. It's like, okay, and have them realize what it's like to talk to somebody who is not looking at them. Because if somebody's writing notes, all of a sudden our head's going like, oh my gosh, what are they doing? They're writing notes about this. What are they saying? What's happening? And we kind of get that fear factor in us. So go ahead and wander around a little bit, look down, and help them with that aspect. What else is going on in the chat, Kelly? What other tips do we have?
I need some tips. Give them to me. Oh,
What was
there's the
that? I'm
teachers.
sorry, the last part.
Okay. I'm asking for tips from teachers. If you have them, write them in the chat. Um,
Oh, I see one in here. Somebody's talking about youth poetry workshops. Who's that from? Maryland? I would love MD. I'm sorry, it's MD. Can you get on online and open up your microphone? Tell us some more about that. Michaela, thank you. Yes.
Yeah. So in terms of working, taking some of the skills from teaching, writing about poetry and the importance of um to gaining and like holding other people's attention just in terms of giving writing in pauses to whatever you're presenting, I think gives students the nice little kind of shelf to rest, so they're not running over their own words, but also they can definitely feel people like leaning in a little bit more, which is also like a nice confidence boost.
That's an excellent idea. Thank you so much. Oh, and you're in Washington. My niece lives up in
Mhm.
Washington. Yes, and my
Nice.
sister now too. That is really important. If you can get into poetry, that's a great example. I was also going to reach out and let you know that there are improv classes and improv exercises you can bring into the classroom. And if you want, I can share that with Bill later on some improv exercises, or maybe we could even have a Zoom call separately where we talk about some improv exercises. And I learned all about improv from Glenn Morshower. He's an actor. Glenn Morshower. He was on the show 24, and he often plays a military leader in some movies. And he had led a group that I'm part of in some improv exercises, and I found them so incredibly helpful because improv is so fast paced, it gets you out of your head and actually jumping ahead on some activities. This goes with one of the other topics. So I'm going to remind me to come back to improv, but it's very helpful. I love the poetry idea. All right. Then anything else to add to that, Michaela? And did I get that right? Okay. Did I say your name correctly? Perfect. All
also
right.
had
Thank you
a
so much.
question.
Yes. Go
Also had a
ahead.
question about how do you support students with pacing? I've had that happen with my students where they like speed run through their presentation, just like jumping over their words when they get nervous. How do you help them with pacing?
Yeah,
Or the
pacing is
opposite?
pacing is a big
Slow.
challenge. When I gave my first talk in that Toastmaster meeting, it's an icebreaker. It's all about yourself. And I was telling you, the dog wasn't even paying attention at first. And then I got the picture. I got up to give a talk for 4 to 6 minutes. I clutched the lectern, and I leaned in, and I talked so fast, so intently, so much like a runaway train. I'm looking at people, and I didn't realize I was doing this. People in the audience were leaning forward as I just kept talking along and taking a stuff. Like this didn't seem to take a breath because I kept going on and on and on. And when I finished, everybody went because they had been holding their breath for me because I wasn't taking a breath. So pacing is a big challenge. Some people it's too slow. Some people it's too fast. So does anybody, I want to find out, because if there might be somebody who has a nugget to share, is there anybody that has a tip on addressing pacing? Go ahead and either raise your hand or put it in the chat. I'd love to know. I have a couple of ideas, but I want to know what you all might find that works with any of the students. Anybody got anything going on in there?
We like the idea of a visual.
A visual. Okay. So like a cue that you might be going too fast or too slow. Excellent. That is, yeah, it's one of the aspects of being able to help people understand how they are doing. So in addition to having maybe red, yellow, and green of getting close to the timing, you want to think about how fast do people speak. And there are ways to calculate this. If you have a written speech or written comments or the written presentation, then you can go and look at how fast is that person speaking. Most people speak around 130 to 140 words per minute, which is a good, understandable way of speaking. And the ear can actually listen a little bit faster, but when it's too fast, as you say, it's a big challenge. So if you think about helping your students, they write everything out, time them in giving the presentation and ask them, how many words per minute do you think you were speaking? And we always seem to have this interpretation that it's different than what it really is. I got the nickname, the T in TK stands for Tracy. I got the nickname Racy Tracy from that very first talk, which is not something I consider to be flattering, although it has come in handy when a program has gone long, is to figure out where to pause, where to take a breath, where to speed up with intensity and excitement, and where to slow down when there's something really powerful. And these are items that you could put into their notes and their talk. So have everything written out, time them, find out where their speaking pace is, 130, 140, 150, 125. And it's not that everybody has to be exactly the same. I've seen great speakers not speak faster than 120 words per minute. There's lots of pauses. It's perfect for them. And there are people that if you ask them to slow down to anything less than 150, you would wonder, why are you putting me to sleep? They just don't know how to speak slower with any articulation. So find out where that words per minute that is for each student. Take a look at the text and find out and identify with them. Where is there an opportunity for clarification needs to be spoken more slowly? And this is a tip. We're not going to go into too much today, but a very valuable tip, which is the words that we know the best, we need to speak the slowest, articulate well. How many times have you left a message on an answering machine? This is going to be old school. And you left a phone number and you would say, "Hi, this is Kelly, and I'm here talking to you from a moon outside of Johns Hopkins, and you can reach me at 292-345-678-910." And all of a sudden people are like, I have to replay that to get the number. So take a look at what might be in their talk that are words or phrases that need to have that slower articulation. So you may highlight those words or bold the words as they're continuing to practice. If there's a part of the talk where there's excitement and energy, where it makes sense to talk a little bit faster, it's like, couldn't believe when we had this kind of result. It just went big. Have that marked in their material as well. So you could have a different color or a different mark in that script or their notes. Here's where they can go ahead and speed up. I'm sure many of you know that having all excitement and fast and excited and fast and excited and fast is not the way to keep people's interest. Likewise, talking slow and detailed for a long time is not either the way to go. So when you can help the student figure out where they can go faster and where they need to pause and take a breath and write it out this way and make the marks on the text, And one very effective item at least I've found effective is when I want to say something with, and you may have seen students talk like this, or you may have seen this written when people are wanting to really emphasize a point, is they'll have one word period, one word period, one word period. Like it was out of this world. And that gives that indication to the student who's practicing their text. They need to punch each and every word with that period as if it was its own sentence. So as you're starting to put these markings into the material that they're learning, and you want to be, I think it's best when we write out a talk, because if we don't write out our talk, our speech, our material, we don't know where to edit, to cut, to put in these cues. So that's my suggestion. Some people say I don't ever write anything down. I'm giving you the way it works for me and many of the people that I've worked with. By the way, I do professional speaker coaching because some of us need to talk and we're never going to be anything but a scientist, an engineer, a doctor, and yet we need to be heard and understood. And I believe everybody deserves the right and the ability and have the ability to be heard and understood. So the pacing is working out when you've got all of this information on their notes, and then go one step further. How long should it take them to go from here to the next point or the next piece of information? How long should it take to go to the next mark, and mark those? And I think somebody put this into the chat, that you have a visual cue. So in addition to maybe instead of having a green, yellow, red as you're coming to the end, is you could hold up, whatever you want, colors. You could have something else, but just to say we'll have colors, and it's on purple, you are now going to be moving to this next point. So they're going to start thinking and feeling in these cues and patterns for when should I be where. And you can also then use something else, some other indicator of here's where you need to be speeding up. So you might hold up, let's just say, if I hold up my cell phone, you need to be speaking a little bit faster. If I'm holding up my sunglasses, you need to be speaking a little bit slower. So when we have those cues, and you can say, do this at home. A lot of times parents or siblings want to get involved in your success, and having this ability where everything is marked on that piece, those notes on that piece of paper, that helps them get involved in their student, their son or daughter or their sibling. So what else we might have in the chat, Kelly?
Lots of ideas.
Okay,
Using a metronome.
that's a great idea, a metronome. Okay, who wrote that? And can you tell me more about that? Let's open up the microphone for that.
Well, I believe it's Mr. Frazier from
Mr.
Baltimore County,
Frazier.
Maryland.
Whoa, okay.
Not
I
that
can
I'm
tell. Kelly knows Mr.
Okay.
Frazier. Can you tell me more about the metronome?
Metronome is a energy transference of pace. It puts you in touch with time, and it's consistent. Anybody that performs in music, you have a performance that you read music, you write music theory, and one of the things they tell you when you're doing your piece, what is the tempo you're going to set? Is it a rushed? Is it slow? Do you want to be quick? You set that pace and you just establish it until you're done the complete piece. And when I found that when it is necessary, you listen to the pace of the thought in your mind, and the metronome just goes click, 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 click. It's just something that you just practice with. And those people, that anybody that has ever done any type of classical training in the music world knows that a metronome helps you establish that thought and the pace. So I just pulled something out of the music world into the real world. For me, that's what I use.
That's excellent, Mr. Frazier. You have brought me back to my childhood when I learned to play the piano and I had the metronome on there. That is excellent. And I'm sure they can do this because there's so much ability and technology now, is what should the pace be at this part of the talk? And then what should the pace be on this part of the talk? It may not be the same. And in fact, if you are always speaking, like I said earlier, at the same rate, at the same pitch, at the same excitement, whether it's good, high, low, fast, slow. After a period of time, it's hard for the brain to stay engaged. With music, you're playing notes throughout. So think about what should the metronome be on this part of the talk, and what should the metronome be at this part of the talk. And somebody put in a link. I don't know what it is, but Kelly, what's in the link?
Put in a virtual metronome, and you can even set the beats, because Tony from New Mexico had another point, which is why not use AI to help students figure out where opportune places for breaks and when to pick up the pace.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's also a piece, there's a platform called Yoodli, Yoodli. I don't know if they have a free version. I'm going to check out. This is going to be an action item for me. Yoodli is a tool that is available to anyone who's a Toastmaster member. And Yoodli will give you feedback as you talk, or if you put into a recording, it'll give you feedback on your pace. It'll give you feedback on slang or not. It'll give you feedback on the number of ums and ahs and ers. And it will also give you feedback on some aspects of language that might not be the most appropriate. And I think Udly gets to know you. I'm going to check on that as well. So Udly is another option. What else do we, somebody, thank you so much for putting that in the chat. I just saw Udly. I appreciate you. Thank you, Kelly. See, assistants are fantastic. Something else that you can do here is, as you're working through all of this, because we're still on the topic of confidence, which may be what we talk about the whole time we're here. There's something else about confidence. Many of you know, because I've talked to so many teachers, we know that the brain is good and strong. The brain also picks up cues from what we tell our brains, or what our bodies are telling our brains. When we are nervous, there's cues that the brain picks up on and says, all right, we're supposed to be nervous. I gotcha. We're going to be nervous. And one of the aspects of confidence and breath is, some of us will take a breath here. I mean, we're all told to suck in our gut, throw your shoulders back and stand proud. And we have a tendency to breathe up here in our chest. And right now I'm breathing up here in my chest. And do I sound like I'm confident? Do I sound very good? Is my vocal quality wonderful? The brain is picking up on, oh, you sound nervous. Okay, you're supposed to be nervous. I gotcha. I'm going to make you nervous. So then maybe your hands start sweating a little bit more. You start feeling a little fuzzy headed, and you lock your knees. There is an exercise that you can do with your students, and it's helping them breathe through their belly. And I don't know if you picked up on the difference between how I was speaking before, we're very breathy, and then taking breaths from my stomach. So one of the exercises that I'll do, and I'll show you the part that we can talk about here, is I have the people that I work with, right before they go on stage, get up to speak, whatever the environment is have you, and you can do this now if you want to, you can either do it in the chair or standing up, is bend over and push all the air out of your stomach. And then sit up and just kind of like stretch your arms up to your ears, kind of just like you're stretching. Sometimes we do this in meetings all the time. And then drop your shoulders and imagine 6 inches. It may not be 6 inches, so let's not get into that. And I'm a math major and I would start to measure it. So just drop your shoulders with some finality and force. 6 inches, just imagine that. That helps us ground ourselves, drives ourselves into the chair, into the floor. And then after you've done that, you take a big breath through your belly and then let it out slowly. I've been able to work with people with nothing more than that exercise and make a difference. It seems goofy, and if we all do it together, it works. So I want all of you to do this with me. So just bend over, blow out that air, come up and stretch, drop your shoulders, take a big belly breath. And the success story on that was, as you heard Kelly mention, I work a lot with TED speakers. And again, you may be selected as a TED speaker, not because you are a speaker or you're going to become a speaker. It's because of what you have to share. And a fellow, he runs a robotic group here in Albuquerque, had developed a robot, this was many years ago, that would understand the Navajo language. You know, we're all very familiar with voice recognition and how it's exploded. So back then, there was not a lot that understood the Navajo language. And we were in the lobby of the venue right before we were getting ready to do this TED event. And I saw him, we were just chatting, and he was waiting for a Navajo student to come in, a girl who spoke Navajo. She still lived on the reservation, and she was coming in to demonstrate this robot and its ability to understand the Navajo language. He had been working with her for quite some time, just the two of them, or maybe a couple of other people, but it was always a small group. And for the first time, she was going to be talking in front of hundreds of people. She walked in, and her shoulders were up here. She was clutching her books, and my friend introduced me to her, and I said, "Hi, how are you doing?" Good. Soft. Breath was up here, entire body was closed in. And my friend said, "Do you have any tips?" Well, I will say one of the last things you do is just before somebody gets on stage is give them something big and deep to think about. But I knew exactly in that moment, there might have been a failure point on that stage if she did not have that projection and robustness of voice to be heard by this robot, because there were going to be 3 different items she was going to speak to. And so I went through this exercise with her. All of a sudden, her shoulders went back after we finished this. Her voice went into her stomach. The vocal quality was fantastic. And it's interesting, the side benefit of going through this exercise, because your brain is now saying, "Oh, we're supposed to be confident. Okay, I gotcha." We start having a bit more presence, and it gives us a bit more confidence. She did phenomenally well on that stage. And this little exercise can do so much. And feel free to say, "I got this from TK." By the way, TKO are my initials, thanks to my husband. So it's like, TK said this works. And I have done this with so many hundreds of people, all age groups. It really works. What else do we have in the chat? Anything on this area?
Asking for other challenges they'd like us to address, or how they get students to project confidence on stage.
Project confidence on stage. The exercise that I was telling you earlier about is going outside, going in the hallway, speaking and practicing in weird places where there could be distractions is one way to help our brains not think about all of this other activity going on, but to think about, I'm talking to this person. And then also the exercise with the picture, that really helps out quite a bit. Now, I mentioned something earlier and I said I was going to come back to it. Do you remember what I said, Kelly, that I was coming back to?
I do not.
If anybody remembers,
I
go
live in
ahead
the
and
moment.
put that in the chat. And because I know I wanted to come back to that.
Improv.
Improv. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes.
Yes, Peter Abe, you win.
What I can do is share some improv information with Bill to send out to all of you if you would like that. Or I could ask Bill if people wanted to have an online improv activity. So just go ahead and let's see, I'll have Bill ask all of you if you want to be part of that or if that would be helpful. And we can do this online. We can do this online. I do have a question for all of you. Are your students in places where they need to present in a Zoom environment, or is this all in person? So enter Zoom, all in person, or both. And let's get some more information, because I have some tips for you on presenting on Zoom, and we'll see what people say about that as they're coming through. And as people are putting their information in there, I do want to go ahead and share something else. When I spent decades working for government consulting, contracts. And one time actually, this was before I even graduated from college. I was working as a summer hire for the same company where I was a 27-year-old. And I was really blessed to work with a fellow, a statistician who never wanted to work with an intern. But the year before, he saw that I worked hard. So, yeah, tell your students if they ever have that opportunity, people are watching. And I was working my butt off, and he just didn't want to have to babysit someone. He had seen that happen before, and spend a lot of time. So he thought, okay, I'm encouraged. I need to have an intern. She can come. So his name is Dr. Fred Ragland, absolutely brilliant statistician. And these were the days of the punch cards. And again, I'm old. And part of my job was to go with the punch cards, sometimes typing them out, and then pick up the printout when they were done. I've learned that you should always go to the bathroom before picking them up, because you don't ever want to stick them on the back of a toilet with a skirt where they all fall in to, oh, something moist, and has to be done all over again. Yes, I did that. Not a good thing. So I came back from picking up the output one time, the very first time, and he looked at me and he said, "So what do you think?" About what? He said, "Well, you just picked up the output. We've been working on this question. What do you think?" I had not opened up the printout. And from that day, I knew I needed to be prepared, because he was always challenging me. Everything we did, he asked me, "What do you think?" before he would share with me what his thoughts were. So he really grilled me. I felt it was the best intern position I ever had. And as we were coming up towards the end of that summer, we had a briefing to a different group in the military, and he was going to lead the briefing. And now this is the days that we had those plastic sheets, the overhead projector, and we were going to be flipping slides, and I was going to flip slides for him. That morning, I was in the office area, and Dr. Fred Ragland's boss came in, and he said, "Well, Fred's sick today. He's got laryngitis, can't even come in. He says you're qualified to deliver the briefing." And I'm thinking, thank you, Dr. Ragland, for grilling me like I was doing a doctoral thesis, because I thought, okay, my brain quickly went through, is like, can I do this? Can I do this? And then he said, "Fred said you can do this." And I went, okay, all right. And then Fred's boss gave me a massively great piece of information. He said, "We're going to be in the room. There's a Q&A. You are going to field the questions. What is most important is if you don't know the answer, it's okay to say you don't have the answer. That's fine." And so many of us think is like, I have to have an answer, right? I have to have an answer. He said, if you know the answer, that's fine. Give it if you're 100% confident of it. If you don't know, you can say, "I don't know the answer." And then you look at us in the back of the room. We're going to have a hand up that it will indicate that one of us does have the answer. And then you can say, Kelly has the answer. So I may not, Kelly does. Kelly, why don't you share with everybody the answer? That's number one. He says, if we are not holding up our hand and we are shaking our head like this, the next thing you say is, "We will get the answer to you." One thing I found out that's really challenging for students, and I felt this way as well in students all the way through my graduate degree, is how do you say, "I don't have the answer," without feeling like I'm expected to have the answers? So say, "I don't have the answer now," or "I don't have that information with me," whatever's appropriate, and always follow up with, you can be looking at your advisors, you can be looking at someone, your fellow teammates, if you're in a team, just to see if anybody's going like, I gotcha, or it's like, I don't have the answer now. I will make sure you get it. It's so hard for us to say, I don't have the answer. So I hope you're making a very safe environment for all of your students to say that. And and then ask them, okay, you don't have the answer. Let's talk about you and me, instructor, advisor to student. So what's next? What are going to be your next steps? Well, I'm going to go read this research. I'm going to go look this up. And then what are you going to do in the future? Well, I'm going to have that piece of information on a card. And that way you know that they'll be ready for the next time. Okay, Kelly, what else do we have in there? Because I've got a couple more items I want to get in.
Sure. Move to that, but we do have some questions asking how do we specifically support our girls of color in presentations?
So ask that question again.
I have a question, or Mr. Fraser, you can unmute. It says that the girls of color have a unique perspective and I'm struggling to overcome.
Yeah, please come on and explain that a little bit more. I think I know what you're asking, but I want to make sure. Go ahead and unmute wherever you are.
Here I am.
Oh, hello.
Hey, I am struggling with building confidence and clarity of focus with girls of color in STEM. They have the information, but when it comes time to present it, there's a wall that I've not been able to understand how to break through. And I need some guidance on how to, in their particular market, their marginalization, they just do not take kindly to present scientifically. If it was a social media, if it was a TikTok, it was something along that line, no problem. But the moment I say present something scientifically, it is a fear and an anxiety that I don't know, and I don't have a technique by which to get them to come out of it and come up and present. That's my struggle.
Okay, thank you. I think I understand the question. So let me know if I get off track a little bit. And I'm going to go back in my memories. When I started out as a mathematician and in the consulting world, while I wasn't a woman of color, I was a woman. And everyone else in this one contract, an entire floor of people, there were three females. Two of them were administrative support and me. I was temporary on some contracts, and in those days, technology wasn't as good as it is now. So you couldn't get a key to certain rooms if you were not permanent. And I was working on classified material and I was locked in a room, couldn't have the key, but I had a table, a chair, a phone, and then the stuff I was doing on the wall. And I had to make a phone call every time I needed to go to the bathroom, when it was time for lunch, and a fellow had to open the door for me. It was really uncomfortable being the only female. So while I said I can't say that I understand a woman of color, I understand the whole aspect of being a woman. It was very hard for me to speak up, step up. It was hard for me to sit at the table. I never in the beginning really felt like, you know, this isn't my group. I don't feel like I belong. So I'm going to ask if there's, first of all, is there anybody here who has addressed that specifically? Young women of color, have you ever addressed that in your school? And maybe if we can extrapolate that a little bit more, because in New Mexico we have a large Latino population. If there's anything where there might be some similarities, where it's a group that feels a little bit different. And I love that you said that they're fine on social media. So is there anybody that has any thoughts or experience there?
I'd like to offer to most of, I know I can speak for Maryland, but most MESA states will connect you with, different role models in STEM. So that might also be an avenue, but I just want to make everyone aware of those resources. So if we can connect you with scientists and engineers, if you're looking for a certain perspective, even if it's just like, do you have any engineers or scientists from the county? We can connect you with those STEM role models.
Okay. And do we have anybody in chat that says that they've experienced this or has something that they could do or use or suggest?
Yes, Rory from California has her hand up.
Okay, come on online. Let's talk.
Hi, I'm actually I got a math degree, went to Berkeley in statistics and math, and I am a, African American woman, and I have, girls of color in my classroom. And I think I will say it is important to have a woman and a woman of color to speak directly to that. Go Bears, yeah, thanks, go Bears. And so I think that I speak directly to it because I can. I can talk to them about um, this what am I trying to say? Like the whys of why they're intimidated. And I just really, and I would say I really do just push them and I tell them you can do it. And then the other thing, and having me say it, I think is the most powerful thing because they can see like themselves reflected in me. And I will say my girls and they killed it with the glider competition. Like they beat everybody because I kind of get them in this very Wonder Woman-esque kind of mode. It's like, you're superheroes, you can do it. And you got to really, I would say you got to overcompensate and really pump them up because you have to understand how much messaging like I got even when I was at Berkeley, like you just get it all the time through these microaggressions that girls can't do the same thing. So you as an educator, I think any educator can do that, even if they're not a woman of color, just really pump these girls up, like get them hyped, almost like you're going to a basketball game, like a team, like, warrior mode, like get them super hyped about they can do it and then also prep them. So, like, because they are scared and there's stigmas on girls, right? So, a girl failing and a girl of color failing is much different than like a boy failing or a boy of color failing, right? Their boys can kind of bounce back, I think, sometimes a little better. And what I do sometimes, and I think everybody can also do this, is to prep them. So, like, if I know they have to present or they have to do something, I'll prep them ahead of time and maybe we'll practice separately. I'll say, come in at lunch or stay after class. I'll write you a pass to your next class. And like, we spend time actually like doing it so they don't feel like the first time I have to do it is in front of everybody. And then you pump them up when they're doing it. And it's kind of Pavlovian because then and then like when they do it in front of the whole class, and I do this with everybody, like everybody gets a round of applause and everybody, so I think understanding that they're under duress all the time, that
Mhm.
contributes to why they're so hesitant. The messaging they're getting from families, peers, and everyone is why they're hesitant. And then especially a person of color too is getting that messaging. So you have to pump them up, get them hyped, and then also maybe pull them aside and help them prep so when they get there, they're ready. Lastly, during the presentation, really be there like as the coach, like, okay, like, you're in a game, right? So you're still there, like cheering them on from the sidelines, like, yeah, you can do it, and changing that narrative in your classroom. So even if they make mistakes when they're presenting, you're like, it's okay. And you make it a norm of like, that's fine. And you were going to keep going. So, I think all those things and just being aware that girls are always, and especially girls of color, are always subject to microaggressions, sadly, from other teachers, from society, and just mitigating that in your classroom and helping raise their status, I think is important. Okay, that's it.
Rory, that is absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. And you touched on some of the things, yeah, that I mentioned earlier is, make it safe is one of the biggest messages is we need to make it safe to try. Try storming involves tripping, stumbling, doing well at moments and not realizing you're doing well and reinforcing that. And then there's also those moments like, here's where it could be better, and how we present that feedback. And you tied into something I'm sad to hear, but also glad to know there's so much commonality because with me it was all about female. I even share stories with people that when I was a working professional and the company was reimbursing us for classes, as I was going through my master's, and I decided to drop off the paperwork because I was working on the Air Force Base and I was in the building, and I dropped off the paperwork to get signed, figuring, okay, just shorten that by 2 days and reimbursement will come faster. And this VP happened to be sitting in the office. He happened to have been a past military leader. And he said, come on in, what's going on? And I said, well, I got these reimbursement papers. And he said, oh, okay, I'll sign it right now. And as he pulled it out and went to sign the paper, he says, I've been meaning to talk to you about this. And I thought, little old me, he even knows who I am. And as he signed it and put it back in the envelope, he said, yeah, I've been wondering why are you going to school and why you're not home having babies? And I'm thinking, I have no idea what to say to this. My tongue was on the carpet as I dragged myself out of that room. And this is why I'm really just obsessed with helping people get the voice that they need to have so that they can be heard and understood, because we all are facing something that somebody thinks you don't have it. And I think that's so unfair. So Rory, I'm so glad that you shared what you did. And I'm going to reinforce, this repetition. When you can develop that confidence and you have people say, okay, she knows what she's talking about. And I mentioned that whole, the having the picture, having whatever. Here's another thing I do with some people when they have something a little more serious, maybe even like the competition presentations. Tell everyone in the room, and this was after, Rory, I do love the small group activities, really, really powerful. When they're getting closer, have everyone in the room, and the other teams are in the room, say, all right, you're going to present, and everyone else in the room, talk, throw a ball back and forth, be distracted, be annoying, not objectionably so that people can get used to having people talk, having people do things and maybe not necessarily pay attention to you. Because I've seen it. There might be a string of men or maybe engineers, because math is sometimes not considered serious. And I come up and you could just tell some people are like, yeah, I'm just gonna go work on my lunch list. So go and do whatever you can to help them. And Rory had that great aspect of it. The repetition, building that confidence, learning how to breathe, and having that encouragement. You can applaud. And Rory, I love the fact that you said treat it like a sports event. We need to cheer for our geeky, nerdy students and peers just as much as any boxer, football player, baseball player, whatever. We need to have that kind of excitement. Kelly, anything else in there? Because I want to leave people, we've got 5 minutes left, and I want to leave people with just one more thought.
Lots of advice.
Okay, good.
Cool. So making the class a safe space, setting up guides on what professionals speak looks and sounds like. We often forget that we say these things like sounding professional, but as a few students know what professional speak is. We set up examples. And constantly reinforcing it, taking students to STEM-related conferences so they can see what professional speak looks and sounds like in real life. All good things. Examples, lots of examples.
Examples are great, yes, and I probably say yes too much to activities where it's like, can you come visit my class, or can you come visit this group? Yesterday, I was talking Rotarians, and one of them asked the very same question: is how do we help people gain confidence? This is not a certain age group or a certain category. Confidence hits everybody, and there's some reason why we just don't feel that confidence that we can own when we're prepared for it. So a lot of these tips that we were sharing here today, and you heard from your peers as well, are absolutely critical. The repetition, the cheering, the support, take it into a small group, take it offline, giving your students ideas on how to practice at home with a picture, maybe talking with each other in public places, in a park or something. Having that, I love the idea of a sports environment, treating them like, look at you, look at what you did. And one of the things that my company did is we were involved with the space park in Alabama. And so we sponsored students to come out there, and the students came off the plane putting on their jumpsuits, and people were looking and staring in a good way. And they said, we're going to share this with everybody. So they had an event at their school where they presented to all the teachers and any students that wanted to come. So treat them like celebrities in a good way, not the weird way, as like the celebrities that they are for their knowledge and their passion. And the one other point I wanted to leave with all of you is what's important for any speaker is that listeners want to know that you're passionate. They don't want you to be perfect. They really want to hear your passion. What do you have inside your heart that makes you want to do this, say this, present this topic, discover this idea. What's the driver? And share that. Because sometimes when we have that other nugget, we're like, oh, I get that. And if you make a mistake, if you just like trip on something, say, okay, wait a minute. I know that thought's in my head and I got to wait for the train to come back around. I got it. All right, here it is. Because when you are real and authentic, and this even happened on Broadway one time, and this is the one that everybody talks about, some very famous Shakespeare player forgot a line and he was standing there on stage and he forgot and he looked at the audience. He said, I forgot my next line. The audience gave him the line. He said, all right, yeah. And he gave back and did the show. That's the one I keep hearing about from people because they were real. Geeks Can Speak. I'm so excited to be part of this. I wish you all the best. I'm going to capture the chat to see if there's anything else I can give to Bill afterwards. And thank you all so much for your participation. And thank you so much for what you do for your students. I am dedicated to just always doing everything I can to think about that next generation and those examples that I had that weren't necessarily the best. Thank you. I appreciate you. So it's time to go back.
Thank you so much, TK. I know we're being stolen away, but thank you so much.
Thank you for